Okay, dug around for some stats. We'll call this CSI Sports Source. I had the cadaver of the 2024 season. I was cutting it open. I wanted to get into the passing stuff first, and didn't know what I was going to find. Just wanted to do some math and see what we got, if there's any trends we could spot that would be interesting. And there were. And I'll start with a big picture one. All right, so let's go ahead and put the first one up here. What you got here is the number of Tennessee passing yards versus SEC teams by year. So it just kept it in the conference, took the non-conference out of it. 2021's over on the far right, so 2024, this past year's on the left. But the average in the SEC, it went from the first year, 257 yards per game, to 297 in the 2022 year, that great year, down to 248 under Joe Milton, to 205 last year. The yellow are the games where you went over 250, 4 in 2021. 4 in 2022, 4 in 2023. Just did it against Kentucky and Vanderbilt this year. Thoughts on the disappearance? I mean, losing 50 yards a game in passing, that's quite a dip. And you've lost 100 yards from 2022 to 2024.
I think Nico he's not there yet, right? Like, clearly. And so I think that's part of it. I also think that Kevin Simon's been on our show a lot. You have him on with your show on Saturdays. And he mentioned after the Oklahoma game, he said the Tennessee house is on fire. And Brent Venables showed everyone how you defend Tennessee's passing game. So they have to make an adjustment to be able to put that fire out. And I don't know that Tennessee made a lot of adjustments to put the fire out at the end of the day. And so I think maybe Venables showed how you break it, and Tennessee has to adjust to what teams are doing right now.
Well, and what he did was that 3-3-5 stuff, which Missouri had actually done a little bit of the year before. But yeah, that's I'm not going to put it all on Nico though, and we got some other numbers here that are coming on the receivers. But the passing game, it's not the same. It's just anybody who watches it knows it's not the same.
You could make a little bit of an explanation for this year. That, okay, you weren't ready with Nico because he was inexperienced.
Yeah, first year
starter. A lot
starter.
of different reasons. And you were able to lean on your running game more. So maybe part of it was a conscious choice that, okay, we're not quite here. We're not going to force the issue. So we are going to go with Dylan Sampson because we do have something here. I think that is the sunshine version of this.
The Sterling Hinton version.
Yes, I'm playing Sterling Hinton.
So where's the rank count club version of this? Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, let me go to the next one, and we'll get these two guys in as well. All right, the last 4 quarterbacks throwing for targets of 20 yards or deeper. All right, so 20 and Hendon Hooker, his first year, completed 37 passes, 37% of the passes over 20 yards, 44% in 2022. With Milton, it dropped to 29%. It climbed back to 32% with Nico this year. So actually better than Milton last year in terms of hitting on those. But the touchdowns weren't there. You went from double digits to bigger. But in terms of the number of attempts over 20 yards, it was very similar to Hendon Hooker's first year. 50 this year, 53 Hooker his first year. And what you'll see in some of these stats is Nico's first year, similar to Hendon Hooker's first year in a lot of these areas, which I think for people who are out there freaking out, that may be a sign that, okay, calm down, kid will be okay. We'll see. Thoughts on throwing it deep, success rate, whatever?
The first thing that stood out was the lack of attempts. So he was closer to Hendon in year 1, but Hendon didn't start the whole season either. He would have had more attempts
if he
down
played
the
those
field.
first 2 games,
Yeah. So they need more shots. I do come back to wide receiver play and the weapons. I don't think we're close this year to what they had in 21 and 22. Cedric Tillman was terrific in 2021. We know what Jalen Hyatt did the following year. Even Javonte Payton was terrific in his role as a deep threat. So Nico has to improve. I would bet on him improving and his numbers looking better next year than this past season if the help around him. I also think there was a lack of pass protection on the edge this year that greatly affected
especially
what
that right
Nico
edge.
could do, maybe what Josh Heupel trusted them to be able to call at times too.
Guys, I look at it and I think that 2-by-2 formation wide, I think it's lost some of its luster. I mean, you no longer have that switch release that one season had 15 touchdowns and Jalen Hyatt had 11 of them, 5 against Alabama. You no longer have that. I mean, if you're doing the wide receiver screen, that doesn't seem to get you anything. So you don't have like any motion. You don't have any, you don't do any shifts.
Yeah.
Well,
you
you
just
don't
line
run
up.
it as fast as you used
That's-
to.
that's-
And
also
with
in
no tempo, then what have you got?
You already did the producer thing. You went straight into the next deal, and that is the screen passes. You saw the deep balls. I wanted to see yak. I thought, where's a good example of this? So I looked at throws behind the line of scrimmage. Let's take a look at these numbers.
boy.
All right. Go back to Hendon Hooker's first year. Passes behind the line of scrimmage, there were 54 of them, almost identical to Nico. 9 yards per completion. His second year, it was down to 6, but they didn't try as many. Only 38 of those screen-type passes or flips to the running back. 7 yards per catch for Milton, less than 5 yards per catch on those screens and flips last year. To me, that screams you don't have receivers who are special.
Right.
And that's your Boo Carter stat. There's how you use Boo Carter. Line him up right down the line of scrimmage, throw him the ball, and see if he can make somebody miss. Because last year you had no one that could make anyone miss.
Well, I also noticed this year, too, that you had a lot of defenses walking up closer. You had a lot more, I don't want to say it was all press coverage, but they were walking up closer. When they do that, those plays aren't going to work as well unless you get, really good blocks from the other guy that's out there. So that also goes into a lack of respect for your receivers. Hey, we don't have to play 8 yards off the ball because this guy can't run by me.
There's also different types of receivers, right? Like Tennessee
Should be.
Cedric Tillman was not a guy, you threw the ball up to him and let him make a play. You did not throw him the screen. Tennessee had Brew, and just a lot, like Squirrel was hurt for a lot of it. Thornton didn't do a lot in those plays, but Brew is not a guy you throw the wide receiver
You
screen.
didn't have
and he's making
Velus
3
Jones
guys.
kind of a.
You don't have that. So I think Mike Matthews is that kind of player where Cedric Tillman, you throw the ball to him if he's in single coverage. Brazel's that guy. Throw the ball to him in single coverage and let him make a play. But he's
And
not going to
usually
make a
that
bunch of dudes
play
miss.
ends up
That's not what he
on
is.
the ground.
Yeah, I don't know about Brazel being the guy.
That's when he was
terms
at
of
Tulane, I
Yeah,
should
well,
say.
in terms of Pro Football Focus, he had 6 drops last year.
Yeah.
Which is 3 times as many as anybody else on the team. I've never seen anyone with 6 drops.
So maybe is Tennessee recruiting the wrong type of wide receiver to the things they need to do?
Or not coaching them and getting them to do what they need them to do. Yeah, it may be getting the wrong type. Either way, I don't trust them to identify a wide receiver and properly develop them at this point. They developed, Tillman and Hyatt developed, but they didn't find those guys. So, okay, when we come back, let's continue this deep dive into the 2024 offense. More interesting stuff on the quarterbacks. Come on back.